Hello and welcome back to the Cardiff Central podcast. The Blue and Blacks are back from South Africa and we'll be discussing whether it was a point gained or three lost against the Sharks on Friday evening. Before no sooner are they off again on a plane back to Benetton this weekend. Elsewhere, the Rags are cooking on gas, the new contracts keep coming, and does anyone know any second rows? Joining me on this week's pod, I've got Fraser Stroud. Fraser, how are you?
Yeah, feeling all right. The sun's out. It's nice to see.
Oh, must be nicer where you are than I am, as I look outside my window in West Wales and I can barely see the house behind because of the fog here.
Shit.
We've got Andrew Ford. Fordey, how are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Yeah, very good.
Yes, and Simon Jones. Simon, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, mate.
Good stuff. Right, we'll get into Friday's game then. The Friday 5 p.m. kickoffs are done, unfortunately, for everybody who really likes watching games as they should be commuting home from work. So, Cardiff lost 21-15 to Sharks in Durban. An early Fepsi Buthelezi try opened the scoring, but Mason Grady scored a 10-minute brace either side of a Jordan Hendrickshire yellow card to give the Blue and Blacks the lead. Buthelezi grabbed a second and a Yao Pensa solo effort put the hosts in front at half-time, but a bit of a battle in the second half kept it quite low scoring until Johan Lloyd kicked a 72nd minute penalty to secure us a losing bonus point for our efforts. A couple of three-word thoughts. Sid said good bonus point. Richard and Paul both went with could have won. Tony said boys fought hard. Gareth said just our fucking line out. Ben said the second row crisis, and Gareth went with derbies now crucials. We look ahead to the URC in a couple of weeks. Fraser, general thoughts on that one?
I didn't manage to catch it on the Friday, so I watched it back today actually, and I came out of it quite feeling quite positive actually. I think we played well for most of the match. I think we were generally defensively pretty sound, barring obviously the tries at the Mall and that kind of jammy try by Pense. I mean, it was a good try, but it came out of nothing. I think we should. I also feel that we probably left a lot of points out there, obviously due to the issues at line out were clear. And every time we kind of got into their 22 and had a line out, we lost it or we fumbled. Apart from the occasions that with the grade that one first Grady try was excellently worked, and from the tap penalty was brilliant. But yeah, we left a lot of points out there. It's a real shame about Faletau getting injured. Obviously, it was kind of inevitable, but he was so good. Like, it's amazing how he comes back, and is just like clearly one of the best players on the pitch every time with like zero introduction back into rugby. And yeah, I think I like the way we played. I liked our kicking game in the second half where we just pegged them back into their own 22 and made them play out. And it felt like we were kind of controlling the match for much of it. And physically, we weren't dominated. We were standing up to them. We showed that we're more than capable of matching like South African pack and the strength that they pose. So yeah, obviously disappointed to not get the win, but a losing bonus point is pretty good. And overall, I think we played well. Obviously, the injuries are the big issue coming out of it, but yeah, pretty satisfied actually with that performance.
Good stuff. 40, your thoughts?
Yeah, it was a lot more refreshing to watch a bit of a more competitive game than the Bulls game the week before. There's quite a lot of strong performances across the Cardiff side. Not sure what the stats were in terms of line breaks, but I'm not sure how many line breaks we got at all. But we were pretty threatening with like half breaks as well, which is quite exciting. But yeah, pretty frustrating on the whole. Looking at the kind of bigger picture, there's probably a bit of a missed opportunity there, but bit of relief of at least we got a losing bonus point, and be interesting to see how important that is come the end of the season.
Absolutely. Simon?
Yeah, I think last week, uh, I think everyone said that if we take a point, be relatively happy with that. 2 points would be great. So I think it's job done really. It's a point. Could we have won it? Maybe. Did they have another couple of levels in them? I don't really know. I don't think in the second half I think there was just a brief period where they were threatening our line, but it didn't really feel like that. I think the tries were some disappointing, but yeah, you take a point, wouldn't you? Especially after the Bulls game where we were beaten up and you feared it could be the same. But yeah, I think they showed up really well, and pressure's on now for the next few games to now that South Africa's behind us, where we all kind of give up and go, well, we're not going to get anything from those games. So yeah, pressure's on for the coming games.
I put out on social media after this one, or before the podcast recording today, whether people thought, with benefit of a couple of days to think on it as well, whether it was more point gained or 3 points lost from Friday, and a bit of a mixed response. Martin felt it was a point gained. Yes, we could have won, but with injuries plus the line out, we can't moan too much. Glenn took the opposite view, 3 points lost with a lot of aimless kicking when the game was there for the taking. And then Gareth sort of bridge the gap between the two of them a little bit, saying I'd have said 1 point gain, but having watched it back, it was 3 points lost. Although McNally's injury in the line out cursed us. Fraser, I guess, like, do we come away from that thinking like that point's going to be massive, or is this going might be one at the end of the season we go, oh, if we could have just turned that over in the last minute, that would have been massive for us.
Yeah, I think we might look back and rue it, but I thought overall I think we performed well, and it was just with the injuries that happened, and they could have derailed us. And after what happened against the Bulls, you can come out of that with a losing bonus or still feel happy with that. And if we don't get into playoffs because we didn't get the extra 2 points that we could have got here, I don't think we're going to reflect and say, missed opportunity, because I wasn't expecting the performance to be that good, and I think we could have won, and we did enough to win. We just made some, the line out was an issue, but then I think we'll talk about it later. Second rows we're playing Big Al at second row, and like Josh McNally not there. Yeah, that is going to have an impact on how secure our line out is. I'm sure there are other issues there, but I think overall, I don't think we can kick ourselves too much for missing those points. I would be of the opinion that it's a point gained, and that we're not going to reflect on that and think, we fucked it. I think we should be pleased with that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think if we're going to look back on games, this wouldn't be. There'll be other games we look back on before this one. Certainly, thinking that Ospreys game, Scarlets game in particular, as the season wears on. Fordey, obviously, Fraser mentioned a bit there. We went into the game with 2 fit second rows after George not going down last weekend, and then the sight that nobody ever wants to see of Josh McNally taking the knee and then being helped off left us with just one recognised second row in Rory Thornton on the field. I guess it's not really in the top recommended things of touring South Africa to only turn up for a game with 1 second row, really.
No, absolutely not. And obviously, no disrespect to Rory Thornton here. I think he's been brilliant this season, but I think specifically seeing McNally go down, who's kind of been our old Mr. Reliable in possibly every game over the last 2 seasons he's been here, it's pretty terrifying, the kind of prospect of now being without McNally for the run-in. I thought Alan Lawrence did play quite well when he came on, but obviously he's not a second row. And you could see that kind of the effect of the line out, I think at scrum time as well. But yeah, I think particularly when you're playing in South Africa, where locks seem to grow on trees out there, you really want a little bit more depth there. So yeah, it's a bit gutting to kind of lose McNally that early and play with a back row in the second row. But yeah, a bit worried now, looking ahead, really.
Simon, that line out, it was a 65% line out in the end on Friday evening. Do you chalk that up fully to just having the 1 second row, or is there a little bit that sort of says, well, we could have maybe been a bit smarter in where we were throwing and who we were throwing to, and that, yeah, it's not going to be perfect, but it still could have been a little bit better even with just the 1 second row?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not a line-out technician. I've got no idea. I just used to watch them. Why am I on this podcast? Just before we go on to that, I think it's worth remembering they made 4 changes after about half an hour as well, in terms of, I think did they change their entire front row or on the second row? It was the classic kind of Leinster panicking moment that I felt quite proud of, weirdly. I was like, oh, right, okay. So I think it's worth remembering that. I think that changed things a little bit as well in terms of physically and at scrum and stuff like that, and Doma going off. So all the way through, the kind of odds were against us. Yeah, on line out. I mean, we know South African sides are good at line out. They're good at picking off opposition ball. I think we probably tried maybe a few times to play it a bit safe, and that was being picked off. And then kind of where do you go after that? So was it the fact that we only had one recognised lock? And fair play to Thornton. He did 80 minutes, which is a hell of a shift in the second row with that level of kind of that kind of physical opposition as well. So I mean, we've been in so many games away from home. I think it's probably only the Ospreys game and the Bulls game maybe where we were just like, we just lost that. We weren't even close to getting that bonus point. And it's how we turn that for the rest of the season, but into next season, it feels like we've progressed. We're not being blown out by teams, or all the other teams have regressed. I don't know. We're not being blown out as often by teams, but even we only conceded 3 tries to the Sharks. It was good, but if you haven't got a line out, we're turning over ball in that second half and kicking and in a good field position, and we just lose the ball, and it's demoralising as well. I would assume for the players, where it's kind of like we're doing the hard work, we're getting into the positions, and we know that when they get into the positions, they just take the chances, they take the opportunity. And I think if you haven't got a line out, do we not? Do we kind of tap and go for the 50 meters, from halfway? send Belcher in from halfway, and but you kind of, if you haven't got that, how are you going to win a game? So I think I'd put it down to a bad day at the office, only having kind of one jumper in the line out. Probably there's a little bit on calls and things like that, but there was a bit wobbly. Could we have shortened it a bit to throw over the top, or go quickly and short maybe? But those were lineouts as well that were in the 22, around the 22, where you don't tend to go kind of short or quick because of where they are. So, the lineout hasn't been that bad on average, I think, this season. It tends to be a weak point for us. So, yeah, bad day at the office. Everyone learn from it and find a second row for next week.
I think that's an important point to make, and it's not, there's sort of a balance between wanting to progress and seeing, and pitting ourselves against the top teams, but also being aware of budgets and where we've come from and stuff. And previously, I think if we'd ended up in South Africa half an hour in with one recognised second row in Rory Thornton and the opposition bringing Oxen Che and Vincent Koch off the bench, I think we'd have totally collapsed in previous visits there, to be honest. Like we'd have not got anything from any set pieces. We'd have panicked with ball in hand that we have to do something every time we get the ball, end up turning it over, and we'd have ended up similar, to a scoreline to what Munster suffered against the Sharks last week and being 40 odd points down to them. So I think to deal with the fact that we only had one second row and that the line out around that was also then further shaky is actually quite a sort of a tick in the box for another tick in the box of the mental resilience and just the how far this team has come as well.
I think if you look at it, Dan, if that line out had been 10% better and we'd taken some of that ball outside the 22 and been able to set ourselves, you are looking at a different game then, because we're challenging them, whereas every time we were losing that ball and they were pumping it back up for another line out potentially at times that we then struggled at. So, when you're discussing could we have won it, that line out is a complete kind of game, the percentage of the line out is a complete game changer, because you're then challenging them, you're tiring them out, attacking, whereas, I mean, their second row, I put on the chat, must have been knackered because they were taking every single line out. Not only on their own ball, they must have been exhausted. So yeah, you can't win games without it.
Fraser, you mentioned the Yapanksa score a bit earlier. It was one of maybe a couple of tries that you could sort of describe as a little bit soft defensively from Cardiff, potentially. I wonder, are those just sort of the tries that you kind of expect to see occasionally in South Africa with the sort of talent they've got in their back threes and the way the games sort of play out there being quite open and broken? Or will Mellon, well, I was going to say be unhappy. He probably isn't happy. He'd probably be unhappy if we kept 2 clean sheets, to be honest. But will he be particularly concerned about maybe some of those tries being a bit soft?
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think two of them were from a like a mall, weren't they? I mean, one of them was just splintering off from the mall, and the guy just ran through and it was open, and the other one was a mall, like a driving mall. I think that may be a concern. I don't know if that's Mellon's responsibility, but yeah, I think that our defence in from the line out maybe is a area we may need to work on because it felt a bit too easy that they get the line out in our 22, and it felt like I think we defended maybe one of theirs, but it felt a bit like we might concede a try here, and I didn't feel very confident we'd be able to hold them up. But then that is the nature of like their teams as well. South African teams are like renowned for their strength in that kind of the maul and the up front. And then the Pensé try, it was just good skill from him. He saw the space, he took it. I don't think it was like a defensive frailty. I mean, if anything, it was because we defended well that occurred because we'd repelled them, and then they fumbled the ball and he picked it up after that. So that was a result of us defending well that led him to pick it up and be able to score a try. So I don't think that again is a result of poor defensive kind of structure. If anything, our defense was great. And when the Sharks had possession for extended phases, they didn't really look like troubling us. We had kind of were containing them, and we were good at the breakdown as well. We like constantly posed a threat there, got some really good turnovers. But I remember both of them got one in the second half that was really crucial when they were on the front foot. But yeah, I was actually quite impressed by defence, and I think just two of those tries were definitely disappointing to concede, but sometimes they happen. I don't think that's a reflection on what Mellon's doing or our defence in general. I thought we were quite good in defence, and that sometimes those things happen.
I think with their second try as well, we kind of went to contest the line out. I think both of them was like half lifted, which then made it, I think, quite difficult to get round. And, it just crumbled from that point because it was thrown to the back. And both of them didn't really get up. He was half lifted, and then I think it's hard to get round. And that splintered off and he just kind of went straight through. So I think there's something just around what we doing at that point. I mean, their third try, it was just sickening, to be honest, because Thomas has hit him. The ball's bobbled loose straight into the arms of the winger. And it's a great finish and it's great awareness to chip over. But you kind of, that we do that sometimes is we do get either a big hit or a dominant tackle, push them back. You think, we might like get a penalty or scramble, and we just don't quite react in time. And usually opposition pick the ball up and then go again, and we're a bit out of disjointed in defence. So I think it feels like there's something to work on around when we do defend well and when we're dominant in tackles and we're driving people back, how quickly we kind of reset to make sure we keep that ground. That's the new gain line. We've got to defend that rather than the ball's flying about everywhere. I think it was Benetton, one of their tries. It might have been the try that was disallowed or the try that was given at home. There's a massive hit in midfield. The crowd will go, yay! And the ball kind of like is spun out and they go in and score. So there's something about like concentration levels when we've made like big defensive reads or big defensive hits as well.
I like the idea of the post-match review the week after, and there's just a slide that says, "What are we doing?" And then Corniel Van Zyl stood at the front with his arms open.
Yeah.
Fordey, there was a few comments on socials after the game and then back to us. I mentioned one earlier about the aimless kicking away from Glenn. I think we kicked 31 times on the evening, and I don't have any stats to back this up, but I just felt like watching it, sort of particularly in that last quarter, we were getting into some decent enough attacking positions and then quite often opting for the little chip in behind to kind of turn the Sharks. Was that the right tactic on the night, or maybe was that more just down to, I don't know, if we'd run out of legs by that point and we just couldn't break them down? What did you make of that being our sort of main attacking option?
Yeah, no, I did kind of notice a bit of a trend of when there's probably, I wouldn't say there was an overlap as such, but when there was kind of the ball went through the hands, it seemed the option rather than recycle was to just put the ball on the toe, which seemed an interesting tactic, especially in hindsight. I think inevitably there's always going to kind of be that edge against South African teams where you've kind of got to use put boot to ball, and I think we were very fortunate with that second Mason Grady try that I thought he controlled it with his foot, but it turns out it just hit the ground, bounced lucky for him and he went in. And I think Sheedy put in quite a few good cross kicks. Obviously, since he's joined, he's been pretty good with the kick pass. But I think there's definitely a kind of a case for him to use it appropriately. I think, granted, at the end, there's probably a chance there with Elijah Evans that obviously overcooks it a little bit. You kind of see it, especially on the replay, of there looks like there's all sorts of space anyway. And then as the kick's sailing in the air, Elijah Evans is pretty covered by the time the ball gets to him, and that's even if it kind of stayed in play there. So I think it was always inevitable that we were going to kind of do stuff like that. You look at that Sharks third try, and that's kind of appropriately putting boot to ball. And again, I think it's a great piece of skill, but I think it's incredibly jammy that the ball's bounced the way that it has, and he scored from that. But yeah, I think it's definitely. I don't think we'll apply it in the same way in future games, particularly like the derbies. I wouldn't like to see us kind of put boot to ball in that same way against the Scarlets or the Ospreys. But I think there's probably a lesson learned there to kind of use it appropriately and when it's needed.
I think sometimes it felt we went to that option just too quickly. That last one with Elijah Evans, he just kind of like it felt like the game was they were under a bit of pressure, the Sharks. That ball felt like it should have been popped off for another kind of pick and drive, and just holding on to the ball in that area for a bit longer. And it felt we went to the cross kick really quickly. And I think that's probably why some of the comments around, oh, we've kicked too much, because you remember the ones in the key moments that don't land rather than the ones where Bowen's flying onto it or Stevens is flying onto it. But it just felt a little early in that phase to go for that cross kick.
I thought I think our tactical kicking was actually quite good. I like that we were pinning them back with getting their lineouts in their 22, and they just kept on having to exit. And I think we just maintained that pressure quite well. And I think there were times maybe when we kicked too early or maybe didn't draw the man and make the pass and use an overlap. But I think overall, the kicking we did use was quite well done and quite effective against them. And it kind of, yeah, I think we utilised it well, in my opinion anyway. I think it was actually quite a positive aspect of our play was the kicking strategy.
There was a guy, I watched it in the halfway in Pontcanna, and there was a guy who would disagree with you, Fraser. And I think the sentence he was using was, "We can't win a fucking line out, so stop kicking into touch against them." If we can't win our own ball, we can't win theirs. But I think I asked I mentioned the question about legs. I felt watching that last 20 minutes a little bit as well that we were going boot to ball early because we basically did not trust ourselves that when we were getting to width, we could sort of staff breakdowns properly to like hold on to possession and keep the ball. And it obviously was incredibly warm there. Like I thought I got sunburned just watching it. So a couple of the ginger lads must have been in dead trouble. I was surprised Rory Jennings actually came off the bench. If I was him, I'd just stayed in the stand. To be honest. But yeah, it's an interesting one because it is something we've done a lot, the kicking in behind. But yeah, as Simon said, it's obviously more noticeable when it doesn't quite come off and you don't quite get the points. And if one of them does sit up and we score a try from it, suddenly it's great. I love the kicking. We should do it all the time, isn't it? And also, I think there's a Tony tinfoil hat corner about the South African balls bouncing kindly for them and not for us there somehow. I'm not sure exactly what the technology is there, but Tony will find it, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, there was one where the ball bounced like sideways. I think Sheedy kicked it and you think, oh right, 50-22 on like 2 bounces and it'll be a 50, and it just went sideways. I'm like, that the ball didn't bounce that way for the entire rest of the game. But while we're talking about kicking, for Grady's second try, Sheedy does incredibly well dribbling that ball with his feet in that short space of time. That short space that he's got, it's an incredible bit of coolness to do that. And I know he gets some unfair criticism from some fans, but I thought that was just brilliant.
Simon, one of the other injuries we saw, unfortunately, was Taulupe Faletau. It looked like, obviously, no confirmation of this yet, but it looked very much like another arm injury that he went down with after being tackled following an offload. And if it is the case, then very concerning because that's probably the third one now maybe he's had. And suggests potentially a weakness there. Um, if that does prove to be the case, that'll probably be him done for the season. A great servant, but I suppose, is it now the time that we say we've sort of seen the last of Faletau in a Cardiff jersey at this point, and that it might maybe make sense if for both parties if he moves on?
I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. Don't put words in my mouth. I think, I mean, as Fraser said, when he comes back and when he plays, it's just phenomenal, and an incredible player. Um, you just feel if it's the arm again, as you say, Dan, it does suggest maybe a weakness there. If it's the shoulder, or it's you just feel for him because I don't think he's not going to want to be sat on the sidelines, not playing. He signed a contract. You get the impression he's the kind of guy that just wants to go out there and do his job and do it to the best of his ability, which is to a world-class level. I hope it isn't, but I've got a feeling it might well be, because with the budgets the way they are, unless it's a significant pay cut to carry on playing, I just can't see how we can have somebody that is injured for that long, and not then not in a Wales squad, so not bringing in that kind of income. But I'll be gutted. I'll be gutted if it is, because I just for him and the player that he is, I just want to see him have a season. Even if he retires from Wales next season, I'd always give him a contract because I just think he's absolute quality. But he needs to. He's probably got some decisions to make himself around. How much longer can he go on? How much longer mentally can he go on with playing 2 games, or not even seeing out 2 games, and getting a potentially similar type of injury? It must be really hard for him to go through as well. But yeah, let's not make that decision yet.
It's it's
I
almost
think he's on his way.
it's almost frustrating that he's not worse when he plays. Like it'd be much easier if he wasn't reaching any of the standard, But he's so good, and that 50 minutes he was on, making breaks, just his handling, just everything. He's just as good as he was 4 years ago. Like he hasn't deteriorated almost at all, as to the layman's eye. He just still seems as good as he was. So that's all the more frustrating that he gets these injuries, and in his mind he must be like, I was killing it out there for 50 minutes. That was easy, and keep on getting injured. Like it would be much easier for him, I guess, to make a decision if he was like, yeah, bit off the pace. I wasn't the best player on the pitch. It's like, I know I was the best player on the pitch. Yeah, if I hadn't got injured, I probably, we might have won that game. Or it's just it must be really difficult for him. Those injuries just keep pegging him back. But yeah, I wish he was worse when he played. It would make it easier for us, I think.
I think as well, part of my thinking is I don't want it to end like this for him.
Yeah.
He's been such a fantastic player for Wales and for all the clubs that he's represented. I don't want it to end after 15 minutes in Durban, having to go off with a similar injury. I'd want him to play the last, 5 games of the season and then call it on his own. It's his own decision in a way. I don't want it. I just think for what he's given Welsh rugby, and what he's given Welsh rugby globally as well, is probably what at times maybe still is, but definitely at times the best 8 in the world. I just want him to do it on his own, on his own decision rather than it being forced on him. But I think that it feels like the body's starting to give out on him. I hope it's not. I hope it's not, and I hope it's a short-term thing and he's back. But it didn't look great when he went off.
Yeah, the offload that he produces just before the tackle, I don't think anyone else on our team makes that offload. I don't think anyone else even knows that Alan Lawrence is there, to be honest. Let alone has the skill set to then actually go and make the offload. So yeah, unbelievable player, and we'll certainly hope we'll see him in a Cardiff jersey again before the end of the season. But we'll wait for an injury update on that one. Fraser, more positive player news. Mason Grady, his stat line on Friday afternoon: 5 carries, 2 line breaks, 69 meters made, 2 tries, 5 tackles, and a turnover as well. Was that the best we've seen him in a Cardiff jersey?
I think it was definitely the best we've seen him this season in a Cardiff jersey for sure. And it's really nice to see him getting back to like the potential he has is obviously quite staggering, like with physicality and pace and everything. And he was good all round. It wasn't just the tries or the little moments. He was just good in the air. He was competitive in the air, getting the ball back for us. He was making the right decisions. Like, his pace is pretty mad for a guy that size. And yeah, I think he was brilliant. And obviously he took out Estes, and that tackle was very satisfying. But yeah, he looked like when he's like, right, okay, he's on another level. He is that quality that other players don't possess. He kind of, again, meeting that potential that he shows. And I think today, Friday was the game this season where it's like, yeah, okay, that's the Mason Grady that everyone really excited for and can't wait to keep playing. I can't wait to see him in the next game and score another couple of tries. He seemed kind of unstoppable. Is like that kind of player you can't really defend. He's got so many such a wide skill set. So yeah, I'm excited to hope that he continues that and playing on the wing. Obviously, I think it suits him, and I think I'm excited to see the next game and see how he does.
On that, Fraser, I know we're going to do selection next week, but do you think he needs to play next week now? Because he's kind of had these injuries where he's been in and out of the team. He's been with Wales, and does he need that? Right, you're going to go again because you were so good last week. I mean, with how you pick wingers, but we'll come to that, I guess. But
I mean, I think I would. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. But I think playing that well is like, all right, yeah, give it. He'll want to play after performing like that, won't he? He'll want to cement that and just like reinforce. Yeah, I'm really good. I'm showing you that. I'm going to show you that again. So I'd probably play him. But I guess we'll talk about how we prioritize that match. But
Fordey, and this might be something we discuss later as well, but with Grady, when he came back into the team, sorry, I'm distracted by my cat over my shoulder there, sort of blurry in the background for YouTube viewers. When he came back into the team just after the autumns, wasn't it? I think he got back fit again, and Van Zyl was basically saying, we're going to play him on the wing for now, give him a run of games because he hasn't had it, and that's where we're going to be picking him. At what point do we start the conversation of, do we start think about moving him inside to that 13 channel, or do we just, he's going all right for now, he's staying fit, just don't like mend what isn't broken type thing?
There's probably a question surrounding how long Harry Millard can stay fit, because if his body's broken, then you then consider chucking Grady inside. But yeah, I think it is working a lot more than I was willing to admit at the start of. I do kind of see him in long term as a 13, but I think on the wing it is working, and I think particularly he does come searching for the ball off his wing, which I think is where sometimes he is kind of most effective in a way that's kind of probably not as predictable for defenses. Like that break he makes in the second half. I think it's unfortunate he's kind of so far ahead of everyone that he kind of runs out of options, and then obviously eventually knocks the ball on. But yeah, no, I thought he was fantastic on Friday. And excuse me, the fact that he's just turned 24 as well, and he's had some pretty serious injuries considering he's just turned 24. There's a big future there. But yeah, I think while he's still got the legs as well, you might as well rinse him on that wing as much as you can. And then he'll kind of, as he matures and as his rugby IQ improves, which I think it will. I do think there's sometimes still elements of his game that's probably a little bit raw that he needs to develop a little bit more before he comes inside. I just don't want him to kind of be this Owen Lane type figure who was kind of heralded as this next 13, and then it never really materialized. So yeah, I think for now, just kind of make the most of him on the wing as much as possible. And as we touched on, I think he does have to probably play this weekend just to kind of keep that momentum going.
Yeah, I think there's a deep dive to be done about our sort of general development of 13s, having seen Elijah Evans come on the wing again on the weekend as well. Whether we're I think we're right to be somewhat cautious about bringing lads into what is, an incredibly difficult position to play, particularly defensively. But whether we're then so overcautious that we never actually bring anybody in there to play the position in the end, and you end up with, Ray Lilo playing for 400 years before he finally retires, and then Harry Millard probably. I think he's doing a decent enough job in there. I've no complaints with him as such, but at the same time, I to question whether we're absolutely maximizing that 13 channel, and he's given a solid 6-7 out of 10, but we saw last season that on the wing he was putting up some 8-9s out of 10, and we haven't quite seen that this season. So yeah, it's an interesting one, and I suspect there is no perfect answer. It's probably the conclusion, but it's one to keep an eye on, certainly from a Cardiff point of view, how we develop that position. Any more on the Sharks game or South Africa tour generally? No, all good. We shall consign that one to the history books for another year then, and move on to the news section.
Oh wait, sorry.
Oh, go on.
Just want to say Mapimpi is a prick. That's that's all I want to say. Yeah.
I mean, fair. Moving on to the news section then. Not a huge amount of news wise. Got two new contracts to report. James Botham was announced as a new deal last week. Good to see him join in. Alex Mann is in the back row as signing on for more. And then by the time you hear this podcast on Wednesday, you'll have seen on Tuesday evening that Evan Lloyd was announced as a new contract by the club as well. So great to have these homegrown lads signing on, particularly, I think the players we've signed so far, probably Botham's the oldest at 28. They're all relatively young players as well, all in and around the senior or under 20s national team squads as well. So that is very promising. And then season memberships did come out last Wednesday. A little bit of an increase, as supporters will have seen, but there is potentially an extra game involved there. There's a special one-off 150th year fixture, which the club, I think they were hoping to have announced with the season memberships. Hasn't quite happened, but fingers crossed they'll get an announcement out relatively soon. There's also a 150 club add-on you can have to your membership, which is quite a lot of exciting stuff in there if you can afford that one. And the early bird window is open till the end of May if you want to. I don't know if the end of the season makes a big difference in your renewal or not. I'm not sure. I feel like most people are either renewing or they're not, pretty much. But if that does, then you've got a few weeks to think about it.
The 150th game isn't against Connaught, is it? We play them a lot.
Even worse, it's away. Go away for the 150th. There we go. That'll be good. Rags Corner then. The RFC played Saturday evening on S4C, which somebody asked, like, why is it not on actual telly? I can only assume it was meant to be on Thursday, but the Wales football team, and which I don't want to discuss hugely because this podcast wouldn't be happening if they were actually any good on Thursday. But I suspect S4C concentrated on them, so they moved us to the Saturday tea time slot. Cardiff went up to Llandovery. Oshandow Lewis got an early score. Then the Llandovery 9 got a red card for attempting to murder Stefan Manuel. Is the only way I can describe the tip tackle that took place. They had a bit of a backlash from that, scored 2 quick tries, and Ben Fry got a yellow card. But then Darwin Lewis a second, and Derry Cross gave us a half-time lead, and the second half was all Fishy's men. Tom Bowen, Joe Goodchild, Ben Fry, Alid Ward all scoring for a 14-45 final score line, a 7th league win in a row for the Rags as well. Means they're 8 points clear in second. They're playing Newport on Thursday evening, back on S4C online. Newport fresh off beating Bridgend and Ebbw Vale and winning the SRC Cup. A few injuries for the Rags. Derry Cross went off early. Nathan Hood went off early as well. So I think any points will be good points on Thursday, so that all they have to really do is beat Swansea on the final day to secure second in the league there. There was a backline of pretty much all young academy talent. Fordey, as their Glant half boys, I'll pick on you. Harry Wild and Oshandow and Lewis, sort of 2 players next off the cabs off the rank. I think Wild in particular, there's been a couple of mentions of him on the pod in the last few weeks. How long do we think before he's like Elijah Evans style, properly in and around that first team and knocking on the door to sort of push Sheedy and Lloyd, and whether Jared Evans possibly coming in blocks that then as well, I guess?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking because I think Wilder's probably kind of there or thereabouts. Like he's on that kind of cusp of. I saw a few of the tries from the game on Saturday, and it's kind of he's probably quite comfortable at semi-pro and kind of needs to get to that next level. And yeah, you do worry. I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen with Jared Evans potentially returning and the kind of fly half pecking order of whether you see maybe Johan Lloyd becoming more of a utility back. But if it then ends up being three fly halves, if you're in Harry Wild's position, you'd possibly be looking to go elsewhere or looking for opportunities elsewhere. So I do think there's definitely next season's probably a kind of not make or break, but a decision needs to be kind of made of how you see his development. Does he just kind of stay playing for the Rags week in, week out, or do you finally kind of make the call of he should come off the bench every now and then? Because to be fair, in the Stade Francais game, I think he played a lot longer than he was anticipating, and he looks pretty comfortable. There's an element of composure there. So yeah, I'd like to see Harry Wild given a bit more of a go. It's just the tricky thing is kind of when you're in this hunt for the playoffs, you can't really kind of experiment as much as we probably could have done in years gone by, which is a good problem to have, but it's kind of trying to fit that gap of when you can develop players.
Yeah, I think something I'd quite like. There's a lot of really good work going on pathway and development wise at the moment, but I wonder if Cardiff could start to properly explore kind of the loans market for the players, like in Wild's boot, maybe like you could put a Matty Young in there as well, Elijah Evans, a little bit Lucas De La Rua, where I don't think they're getting much out of the SRC anymore. I mean, they're a player that is clearly too good for that level, and so whether striking up some sort of relationship with a Cornish Pirates or a Worcester in the English Championship, sort of the top teams in that league, would benefit them as well. A little bit of life experience, getting out of the South Wales bubble as well, for whether it's a whole season or like a 3 6 month block or whatever, and then also, for Harry Wild, maybe next season the Ospreys haven't got a massive depth at 10, especially if Walsh were to leave. Maybe they would be interested in taking him on loan. The Dragons as well. I know they've got Will Ford, who's the same age as Wild, but if is it Harry Ford, isn't it? His brother Harry's the same
Yeah,
age as Wild, and yeah, whether they might be interested in taking him on loan and he gets some more game time there as well. But yeah, I think that's something I'd be interested in seeing Cardiff explore a little bit more, just to give these players try and bridge that gap between the SRC and the first team. But we shall see how they go on that front. A bit of other pathway news. There's been a lot of national age grade representation over the last week or so. So Wales under-19s beat Ireland under-19s at the Arms Park on Sunday afternoon, 24-20. Cardiff had Sonny McCabe, Gabe Williams, Lloyd Lucas, Bailey Cutts, Harry Turner, Evan Hughes, and Johan Leishon playing in that. A couple of points from Lucas's boot and a try for Cutts there. And then the under 18 Six Nations Festival gets underway in France on Friday. More good Cardiff representation with Brian Kamanga, Isaac Jones, Harry Lewis, Will Watkins, George Thomas, Harvey Bryant, Harry Kinsey, Owen Lewis, Will Adams, and Alfie Prigodzic, who's also the captain, going out in that squad. I think particular mention of Harry Lewis, who's a second row with the under 18s. I think is still under 16, going out there at Llandovery College. So good to see just generally the amount of second rows, McCabe and Gabe Williams both starting in the second row for Wales under 19. I think a long time we've had good back representation, but been a little bit underrepresented in the forwards. So that's good to see that paying off. If you're enjoying what you're listening to, then please feel free to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on. Leave us a rating as well if you're on YouTube. Like the video, subscribe to the Rap channel. Loads of podcasts going out all the time, as well as on sister channel, the Global Gain Line. The URC Rewind guys will do a full breakdown of European action this weekend, and the women's pod's back underway with the Women's Six Nations getting started as well. Also, check out our shop, link in some sort of description somewhere, and buy a mug if you fancy it. Right, last part of the pod then. Cardiff into Challenge Cup action this weekend, round of 16 against Benetton. It's a 5:30 kickoff UK time, live on S4C. Weather's looking pretty good in Treviso. If you're going out there, always a good trip out there. We've got Frenchman Kevin, well, Kevin Brally, I suppose is how I would read it. It's probably some sort of French accent you could put on his surname there somewhere. I'm not sure what that is, but that's who's in charge. Benetton have beaten Lions, Perpignan, Dragons, and Lyon for their number one seed to get this far. They've beaten the Ospreys but lost to Glasgow since the Six Nations to leave them 12th in the URC. Head-to-head wise, we obviously beat them in January, just before the Six Nations. Last played them in the Challenge Cup in a quarter-final in April 2023, which we lost, and haven't actually won out in Northern Italy there since a 14-29 win in March 2021. Tries from Hugh Nazarati, Alid Summerhill, Corey Zomachowski, and Ray Lilo, with 3 points from Ben Thomas and 6 points from Jared Evans that day. It's an interesting one this weekend. I asked the question online of people basically saying "throw or go" was the headline I used on Reddit about whether we fully go for it or whether we sort of sit back and focus on the league. Couple of different responses. Ben said before the South Africa tour, I'd have said gone for it, but now I've changed my tune due to the injuries we suffered. Similar from Matthew, who said we're already on the back foot because of the travel from SA. It's unsustainable for the players and the environment. Nathan said no brainer, send a weakened side. Even if they beat Benetton, we'll be away again in the next round, which I don't think anybody's particularly interested in that either. Go into Munster or Exeter, I think it is, if we get past them. But there was a few more comments on Reddit of people. The mighty LV saying, what is the point of finishing in the top 8 if every season we have conversations like this about throwing a cup game? It maddens me. Fraser, what are you fancying here? Are we going for it, or are we sort of saying, I'm not fussed, to be honest?
Oh, rubbish answer, but a bit in the middle of that, straddling that line, I guess. So, I think the injuries that we suffered in South Africa definitely inform my thoughts on it. So I think previously I might have been a bit more, go for it. Yeah, I love a cup run. Why not? I think we've got every chance to beat Benetton. We should probably go into that thinking we're going to beat them, but maybe with the injuries and just kind of protecting players for the remaining fixtures, just to player safety and just like we want to be able to compete in every game. So I'd probably do a bit of a mix and match in terms of who's starting. That's my thought on it. I mean, I'd love to. I think even with a mix and match, we can go out to Benetton and beat them. And I don't know how they're going to approach it, like what their opinions are. I mean, I don't know how in the race for top 8 they are themselves, but I think personally, I would, make some changes, protect some players, but still go in with the desire to win that and play. Still have a fairly strong team out there, and I think even with the injuries, we can still do that more or less. But it has made it harder, and it's made I want to just go, be like fuck it, go for it, let's do it. But I think we can't do that anymore, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think Benetton wise, they are with an outside chance of the top 8, but just looking at their team selections, they didn't bring any of their Italian internationals back for the Ospreys game, and then they sort of half and halved it against Glasgow, where there's a couple of names in there, but not everybody straight back in starting for that one. So I think the general feel is they'll probably go full max as hard as they can for this weekend with a home tie and their number one seed. They probably have quite a good chance of getting quite far in this one if they do put together some performances. Fordey, what would you do this weekend if you were Van Zyl?
Yeah, it's obviously a tricky one now with all the injuries. I think you do kind of mix and match. I think one of the primary things I see is obviously Alex Mann and Josh Adams didn't travel out to South Africa. I feel there's an element of you've got to play them because even if we get absolutely hosed on Saturday, that'll be them. Obviously, as long as they're fit, that'll be them not playing for well over a month. And you feel that they need some sort of game time under their belt in that meantime, especially with the kind of the run in at the end of the season. But yeah, it's if you just like compare and contrast to like last season with the Connacht away game. Obviously, we rested a lot of players for that Benetton game just a week before. And there was kind of a lot of criticism about that because obviously we were still in the running for a playoff place and it was probably a game that got away. And then ultimately we lost in Connacht. Obviously, it's very different now doing it on the back of South Africa. Like, I think I doubt any of the players are going to go into the game on Saturday not wanting to win. They're not going to throw a game away. But there's probably would be an element of, oh, for fuck's sake, we've got to play another game the week after. They don't get that kind of week break then. Um, so yeah, I feel like it's probably a good chance to use a bit of youth. But kind of those names referenced before. I think someone like Lucas De La Rua is probably a good chance for him to have a go. Obviously, he's represented the first team a few times. Steph Emmanuel probably get Tom Bowen involved in some way, but without kind of um, putting players putting a 15 out that kind of is there to just kind of make up the numbers. I think it'd be nice to put in a bit of a shift and have some young players accommodated by some rather experienced players as well.
Yeah, Simon, I guess like which way would you go in? And if we did send like, and there was one comment on Reddit, which is basically the Rags team announcement on Wednesday might give us a bit of an insight into what the first team is, because you could just have all of the Rags team basically go into Benetton. But I suppose is the risk that if they were to go out there against a full chat Benetton, that actually a full young team might actually take more harm than development of just being pumped out there.
Yeah, and I think it's worth remembering that they absolutely buried the Dragons in the group stage, didn't they? They put 70 odd points on them.
Yeah.
And I know we've conceded 70 points out there. Not that any of us really want to remember that glorious last game of the season a couple of however many years ago it was. That was absolutely shambolic. So I think it is damaging. And then you're on the back of 3 defeats going into a derby away at the Scarlets, where people are really then starting to question: have you got, as Cardiff, got the legs to hold on to those playoff spots as well? And I think the coaching team's in a really difficult position, because you come out of 2 a really physical and tiring couple of weeks in South Africa, and you want a home game coming out of that, so everybody's settled a little bit. But you're going out then to Italy, then you're coming straight back into 2 derbies over there. I mean, it's just punishing, that schedule. I wouldn't be sending out a very young team out there, because I think it would be really damaging for the team and the psychology of the team and those players if they get hammered and buried. I think Benetton are having a pretty poor season by their usual standards. They're a very competitive team. They're a very dangerous team. So I think, as we've done throughout the season, really for Europe, it's mix and match. But it's also who's standing, who's still available. Do you? And I guess we'll get into this a little bit, but do you go, well, Ben Thomas didn't play for the entirety of pretty much for the entirety of the Six Nations. Do you keep him going on Saturday just so that he's in a groove by the time you get, or do you try a Steph Emmanuel out there? That I'd have no issue with that, but there's some really tough decisions, because it's we knew this run-in was always going to be horrible, but I think you're not going to have McNally, so you're going to need some kind of senior leadership within that group, and probably a couple more senior leaders, because McNally carries quite a lot in terms of leadership. So yeah, my best bet will be mix and match. I would be really concerned if it's a lot of younger players going out there, because I don't think that'll do anybody any good.
And I guess, Fraser, that there is also a positive angle potentially to look at it if we were to go quite strong, is that we've already beaten Benetton. They haven't had, as Simon said, they're not having a great season. I don't know if Wales beating Italy is a psychological marker as well, potentially, but like, it's a winnable game. If we were going to this like our full 23, you would probably back Cardiff to win it, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think we should go into it with that attitude. I think it's just like, yeah, the main concerns is not necessarily, it's like what comes after winning is the problem. It's like, there's a match in between before the Scarlets game. So it's like, a squad gets stretched again, and then if we win, I mean, it's ridiculous. If we win that, we're in the semi-finals, and then we got to add in another game. But I think it's mainly, it's just sustaining the team and making sure we've got enough players to play. But I would be going into this game fairly confident of winning, and there's no reason, even with some changes, to be honest. I know, like going all guns, I would be fairly confident, especially after the Sharks performance. I know we lost twice in South Africa, but it was another just like we got battered by the Bulls, so it was like, oh no, is this going to continue? We're just going to come out of South Africa completely demoralised. But for me, I've come out of that Sharks game, I'm like, oh yeah, we haven't lost our heads. We're still as good as, we're still a brilliant team and should have probably won that game, and a quality outfit. And we're not in the position in the league by chance. It's through our quality, and we are good enough. So I think I would go into that Truby's game and have confidence in our team beating them.
I mean, imagine if we go out there and we win, and then we're through the next weekend. The momentum that, even if we lose out in Exeter or Munster, that kind of momentum.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Dan. I think they'll be really up for it. I think they'll be kind of like, this is an opportunity to go far, to go deep. Our league season isn't going great. We're probably unlikely maybe to get playoffs, so it hasn't been a great season for them. They'll want to win this. And with that comes pressure on themselves to kind of push things and try things. And, maybe there is opportunity out there. I don't see us going out there as favourites with the current injury list and team that we will probably put out. It's a really hard place to go. But if we're competitive and if we get a win, the boost that brings, I mean, admittedly, as you say, Fraser, we've got to fit in another game. But it's a nice thing to be, kind of, what's it then, quarterfinals or semi-finals? I don't know.
Quarterfinals.
Quarterfinals, you kind of, whether anyone's still standing for that game, or it's like some of our games this season where it's like a fan competition and you get to sit on the bench. But the momentum at this point of the season is really important, I think. So if we lose, as long as we don't get blown out and completely hammered, it's fine. My worry is that we get beaten heavily, and then two of the last three results have been heavy defeats, regardless of the kind of team structure, the teams that's been picked.
Getting into that team news then, which really shapes the sort of changes rather than any sort of thing that Van Zyl's going to do. It's going to be who's fit and who's available. So obviously long-term absentees, there's Ed Byrne, if he exists, Theo Cabango, Teddy Williams is out for a while as well. And then coming back from South Africa, then we've seen Domachowski, Faletau, Josh McNally, George Knott, Aled Davis, Johan Mulder all get injured. Jacob Beetham went into the concussion protocol, so 12 days from the Bulls game means that he would be available this weekend, assuming he's come through those protocols. But sort of the flip side to that is he'd only have one or two full training sessions before getting into this game, so that's something to consider with him. The other thing to consider about this weekend is that I've seen some mention about whether we even chuck like Tom Howe out there, but mention like Oshandao and Lewis as well. You do have to be registered to play in the Challenge Cup with EPCR, and a couple of those guys aren't registered. I suspect they probably didn't think they'd need to be. In fact, the deadline for you can register 3 additional players for the knockout stage, and that was before the game on the weekend. So they registered Faletau with one of those, which was an absolute nightmare that he's been involved. So yeah, it was Faletau. The other one
Teddy
was
Williams.
Ed. Yeah, Teddy Williams has been registered, presumably on the basis that they sort of cover their own backs, and that if we did make the final, he might be fit by then, so it's better to have him available or not. Ed Byrne, I think, is in the same boat there, that he might be back fit. And then Ellis Bevan was the other one, who I'm not really sure why he wasn't registered in the first place, to be honest. But yeah, we registered 4 because we deregistered Cornel Schmidt, obviously, who's left the club in the meantime.
So we chose to register Ed Byrne.
Yeah, we had registered. Somebody called Ed Byrne anyway. Whether it's the Leinster prop or not remains to be seen. But it could be the guy off Mock the Week at this point. Who knows? But yeah, so that's a question mark. Then there's also, I think somebody mentioned Sean Davis as well from the 20s. He's not registered either. So it does that does factor into all this a little bit. We shall start up front then, Fordey. Loose head wise, we've got Southworth, Barrett, and yeah, I guess Johan Emmanuel now comes into the question on loan from Bath. He's looked quite good actually for the Rags over the last 2 weeks since coming back from Bath's Prem Cup period. Hooker then is still just Belcher and David Hughes. We don't think Evan Lloyd is back fit yet. And then tight head, you've got Azarati, Sebastian Wainwright, and Will Davis King is still there as well. Got Joe Cowell as well in the academy, who sort of covers both sides a little bit. What would be your starting three there?
I do wonder if the selection in South Africa, excuse me, was kind of based on this game, particularly for the front row. So I think I'd start Barrett because he kind of obviously I doubt it was intentional, but Southworth ended up playing quite a lot of the second game against Sharks, and obviously came on against the Bulls, so he actually played the most minutes of a loose head, despite being on the bench for both games. So I'd start Barrett. I think out of Belcher and Hughes, I'd start Belcher just so you have your captain starting, and I think it's a tricky one. A tight head, I'd probably give Javan Sebastian the call, the nod there. Yeah.
Second row then, we're just going to skip, to be honest, because we've got Thornton there. I'd fully expect somebody to come in at some point this week because I don't think we can go into a game with just Thornton. So I assume that phone calls are being made and somebody will appear on loan and remarkably actually play for the club whilst coming in on loan is most likely the case.
But do they have to be registered then?
Well, I
Or is
think
it emergency?
there's going. I mean, there must be some sort of emergency thing because if, for example, you run out of front rowers, you're going to have to be allowed to register somebody. So I guess that they will make some sort of allowance for it. If not, it'd have to be Thornton and Lawrence, I guess, because they're not going to throw like an Evan Rees into there or something like that. I think that would be just. I mean, I don't think anyone benefits from that basically by chucking an academy back rower into the second row. So. Thorns and Lawrence is sort of penciled in, but it's not really much point having a chat about that when we don't know the full picture at the moment. So, back row, Simon. We've got Alex Mann coming back into the picture now. He's having had a few weeks off post Six Nation. Then there's Basham, Dan Thomas, James Botham, although I think maybe a question mark over whether they may have given Botham this week off, having gone straight to South Africa following his stint in the Six Nations. Alan Lawrence is there, and then you've got Lucas De La Rua back into it as well from his Rags appearances, and Evan Rees in his actual position in back row. Which way would you go there?
I'd go Mann, Basham, and Thomas with De La Rua on the bench. I thought Basham was really good when he came on. He looked, he always looks dynamic with ball carrying. I think it's the way he kind of runs, and it's a bit chaotic, but. He looked really effective, and I think it depends what happens with Lawrence, doesn't it? If Big Al's in the second row, then you've got some good ball carriers. I just think Thomas as well, slowing their ball down, I think it's going to be quite important. They're quite dangerous out wide, and if we can slow their ball down, I think that helps massively against them. Because there isn't so much kind of broken field and disorganized defense and stuff like that. So I would just go with that experience at open side and see how it's going. I think he can last a game. He's proved that, but I would rather start with a bit of experience, be in the game, and then bring on less experienced players than kind of start with the inexperienced. Then you bring on the experience when it's already lost, and you kind of like go, well, why are we bringing them on then if it's already lost? So. I think that's quite a good balance as well on that back row. I agree with you with both of them. I think he'll miss out this weekend, but we've got Mann. I would be tempted to go with Basham, Mann, and Botham. That would be a really fierce back row, but I think both of them need to rest.
Yeah, and I saw something on Instagram this week. He put a story up, which I don't know, suggested to me that he wasn't in Cardiff at the time anyway. So I wonder if he has properly been given like the full week off, no training or anything.
You usually book their flights, don't you, Dan?
I do. I do follow them around quite a lot.
What world are we living in now?
Um, uh, yeah, and I think it's right about Alan Lawrence as well. That even if yeah, if we do bring in an emergency second row, he probably wears 19 again to cover second row off the bench because I think the likelihood of us getting two emergency second rows in is probably quite slim. And whether you actually want to do that and go and get two new guys up to speed with your line out, or whether just doing it with one and then having Lawrence there as an emergency again is probably the option. So yeah, that's a good shout from me. For me, Fraser halfbacks then. Nine, I think, is going to have to be Bevan because
Yeah.
Ali Davis's hammy is still pinged and look like sounds like, according to Mr. Mulder on social media, that Johan hurt his foot, so is probably going to be unavailable for this one. So Bevan at 9, 10. Then, are you tempted by a bit of a change, or are we going with Sheedy? There's obviously Harry Wild, Johan Lloyd, who can go in there as well. What way would you go there?
I'd probably stick with Sheedy because it's like it's not an attritional position. I wouldn't be worried about him like getting injured or like losing out on him for the next like the following games. I'm not too worried about that. I think it's like a fairly safe bet that he'll avoid any heavy contact. No question marks on the defense, but yeah, I'd probably go Sheedy, and then maybe experiment in the back line beyond him, just so there's a steady head, a person who's been there all season. He is playing well. I know you question some of the kick in sometimes, but I think he's been pretty great this season and reacted well to like Ewan Lloyd coming in to challenge his like number 10 shirt. So yeah, I'd probably stick with Sheedy.
Yeah, he does strike me as a guy who just loves playing as well, like week in week
Yeah,
out. He doesn't need resting, just play and play me all the time is probably his statement to Van Zyl.
yeah.
4D into the centres, then I guess this is where there is possibility of chopping and changing, but that you could also stick with the tried and tested. So obviously, Thomas and Millard will both be available. I don't think there's any question marks over whether they need resting particularly as such, but then there's also Emmanuel and Jennings who could play at 12, and then at 13, Grady could go into there. Got Elijah Evans in and around the squad as well. Beetham is back fit and has played both of the positions as well. Which way would you go for the centre partnership?
I think I've got penciled in, give Steph Emmanuel a start at 12 to kind of it'd be a nice little test for him to see kind of the level that he is at. And then I've gone just for Millard at 13 because if it ain't broke, just carry on with Millard at 13. There's definitely an argument for like an Elijah Evans or Grady at 13, but I just can't see Van Zyl doing it. I think he's going to almost keep them as wing options for now.
I should have checked this before. You might know, Ford. Is Menincello still at Benetton? He,
Yeah,
he is going at
I
the end
think
of the
so.
season, is he, to France? Is
Yeah,
that right?
yeah,
Because obviously that's the sort of other element of picking a centre duo is that I mean Menincello is probably the most informed centre in the world at the moment in terms of his Six Nations performances and carrying that on. So yeah, great test for Emmanuel. But I agree, like it's time to give him a bit of a go. He looked great for the Rags on Saturday, and even despite their scrum half trying to tip him onto his head, he got up and yeah, it's just the pace he hits the ball with. He's very very sneaky quick, and the decision making then is coming quickly behind that as well. So good duo. Simon back through. Let's do wingers, I suppose, in isolation first, because I think there's quite a lot of fullback options all of a sudden. So wingers, you've got Stevens and Grady as your incumbents, but Bowen is back in the picture now after his outing with the Rags. Josh Adams, similar to Mann, coming back in after his Six Nations exploits, and then a couple of the younger guys then as well, like Matty Young there, who could do a job. Beetham was playing on the wing before his head knock as well. Who would you start at wide?
I think they'll start Adams and Grady. I would start Adams and Bowen. I just think he hasn't played for a good few weeks now um, the for Cardiff. He's been with the Rags. I just think out there you're going to need something that frightens them a little bit. That just makes them not quite sure what's going to happen out wide, and we're going to kick probably a fair bit, and kicking in behind to have that pace to chase it as well, even if he doesn't make the tackle and just disrupts. I would just really like to see him back out there, and I think it's a good opportunity. I'm replacing Steve today, and we don't have a weather forecast. We don't have Steve's weather forecast with some merchandise coming to the shop near you. But I think if we're going to just throw a mix and match, you might as well throw something in that's a bit unpredictable and a bit exciting. I know, I agree that Grady's played himself into form. Why should he be dropped? But again, maybe he's coming back from injury, the travel there and back from South Africa. Do they need to be careful with some players? So I think Adams will definitely play, but I'd like to see Bowen, because he's got that X factor that just make defenses think twice around how they shape up. So yeah, I don't think that's what it'll be, but I think that's what I'd like to see.
No, I had Adams and Bowen as well, which, yeah, I agree. Like, you just want to see Grady all the time, but the back three is in a position at the moment where we could probably name like three different back threes, and they'd all be perfectly acceptable at this point, with a couple of players coming back into fitness and a few refined in form, which leads me on to fullback Fraser, probably the toughest selection at the moment. We got Johan Lloyd, I thought was fine there last weekend.
Yeah.
Like a nice little break at one point where it looked like he'd run right up a dead end and then circle back on himself to find a gap up the middle of the
That was
Sharks
great.
kick chase.
That was
good
like
there.
why you love Johan Lloyd. That was exactly it. Yeah.
And then we've also got Winnett, Beetham coming back into contention, Matty Young, and that just some guy called Lee Halfpenny still hanging around as well. Who's wearing 15 in your team?
I think I'd go Cam Winnett, because did he play? Yeah, no, he played against the Bulls, didn't he?
Played
Yeah.
against Bulls, yeah.
I think he was quite good against the Bulls, even though he got absolutely battered. I think he had a fairly decent game. So I'd probably go Cam Winnett. He had a game off, bring him back in. I like him, and he's not an experienced player per se. He's still really young, but he's played a lot of rugby from a very young age, probably a bit too early starting for Cardiff. So it's like good, maybe a little bit of extra experience there. So yeah, I'd go Cam Winnett. I'm thinking of Grady if he's not starting on the wing. I mean, he was lifted in a line out once against the Sharks, so maybe he's going second row. Is that a hint of things to come?
That would be so.
We won that line out as well. That was the 65% of line out.
That would certainly be something. Even if you turned up with 19 and we went for the 4-4 bench split, he's the new Jason Harris doing that for the Rags last weekend. Bench then, Fordey. I've got Dav Hughes at 16, Alan Lawrence in the 19 jersey, and mentioned De La Rua in the 20 jersey already. Backup props, any preference on who the replacements are?
I think naturally you've got to go Danny Southworth as loose head replacement. And Azarati only featured against Sharks, didn't he? He didn't play against Bulls.
No.
So I think I would be inclined to put Azarati in the 18 shirt just as kind of that, if, say, with half an hour to go, it's quite a close game. That's quite a nice player to bring on to as a bit of a threat. So yeah, I'd go, it's obviously Dav Hughes naturally.
Yeah.
Southworth and Azarati as my front row replacements.
There is a question, isn't there? Because those two Bath lads have both signed long-term contracts. Now, was that on the pod last week?
Yeah.
Should we give them any game time? This sounds really mealy-mouthed, doesn't it? But it's also the fact that they're not going to sign for us. They're there to be developed. Absolutely, we want to develop them as Welsh players, and they are Cardiff players. But there is also a bit of, well, we're giving them an opportunity. Then they'll go back and hopefully have stellar careers with Bath and arrive back at Cardiff in a couple of years' time or something like that. But there is, I don't know, maybe I'm just being too mealy-mouthed about it. I mean, we can't afford not to pick players at the moment. We haven't got them. But it does feel a bit like we're developing other clubs' players rather than our own to a certain extent. You don't mind. I don't mind doing that if there is then like, oh, in a year's time, 18 months time, we might kind of get a signing there if they have a positive experience with us. But that doesn't look likely for either of those. As you say, they're going well. I've got no problem with it. But I don't know. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to uh, chat to maybe we'll get somebody from the club on at the end of the season and just sort of discuss because I think that there's benefits to the Rags certainly having two
Yeah, absolutely.
good young players coming in there and I suppose that's what Bath are probably looking at is that they're playing week in week out in the SRC, which is a level above National One or National Two where they would have been playing if they were at Bath, because they're not going to be other than Prem Cup where they've gone back and played anyway. You probably wouldn't have seen either of them in and around a Premiership squad unless there was a proper crisis. So, but yeah, I think particularly at Loosehead it's been an interesting question of Johan Emmanuel's obviously a great player, but we do have like Cam Tyler Grocott coming through and Dylan Barrett coming through and would they have got a bit of game time where Emmanuel's been playing? But then the flip side is, yeah, building a long-term relationship with these guys probably
Yeah,
doesn't harm either if they do want to come back to Wales at some point. So, and building a relationship with Bath, I don't think is necessarily a bad thing either, especially if we got like a Harvey Cookson on loan from them this weekend, who seems to have been on loan with every Welsh side at some point this season, I think. But yeah, it is an interesting one to work out the pros and cons of certainly. Talking of the Bath guys, then I've got Ian Davis penciled in at 21 in the backup 9 jersey. I actually don't know if he is fit or not, though. We haven't seen him since he's obviously gone back to Bath for those Prem Cup games, but he didn't go to South Africa, clearly, as Johan Mulder got flown out there emergency for the second week. He hasn't played for the Rags in either of the 2 games either, so I don't know if he may have picked up an injury with Bath, or maybe he hasn't come back and they needed a bit of cover, but so that might be something to keep an eye on, whether we do need to pick up a replacement scrum half as well to cover Bevan if Mulder and Davis are not going to make it. But for now, we'll assume that he is available and put him on the bench. And then
imagine if we pick him and he's actually Ed Byrne.
two of them in one big coat. And so, Simon, what are you thinking outside back cover? I mean, there's plenty of guys sort of lining up for that 22-23 jersey. Johan Lloyd, Harry Wild, Elijah Evans, Mason Grady, Matty Young, Jacob Beetham, Ewan Stevens. Like, yeah, I probably could list
Yeah,
7 or 8 of them. I guess there's a little bit of question of cover and a little bit of question of do you want to expose any youngsters necessarily here as well?
I think if you go in Emmanuel at 12,
Ben Thomas, of course, so I didn't list him either. He could
yeah,
be on
I mean, it's whether you're leaning towards that. Do we need experience to come on, or are we just going to, whatever happens, you know, you're gonna play 80 minutes regardless. You're just going to go because then that does free it up a little bit because you could have Beetham. I think Beetham might well be one just because cover fullback, outside centre, wing, and then I mean it's whether we go. Do we pick another lock? Do you just go kind of like one back row De La Rua and your three front rows and go, actually, there's nothing left. and you have an extra back on the bench and you put Grady as flanker. But it's going to be really tough. I would go with Beetham and
Do you need a
Lloyd.
10? Yeah, are you going to have to have somebody who could
Yeah,
cover
you're going to
10?
need 10
Unless
covers.
I don't think we can ask. I know Gatland sort of saw Beetham as a 10. I'm not sure anybody else really did though. But
No,
yeah, you're
I
going to
think
have to
I
have
think
somebody
that way
there.
you've got back three cover and inside centre, and you've got 10 and sorry,
Good.
outside centre, you've got 10 and inside centre
Yeah.
cover. I mean, I would put Grady on the bench if we're not going to pick a second row.
If he's not going to play for the first team, I'll pick Grady for the Rags and shove it right up Newport. Any objections there from anyone on any names that we think we've missed at all? No, all good. Well, I say 1 to 23. One brackets -4 and 5 sort of to 23 is so we've got Barrett, Belcher, and Sebastian in the front row, and then as things stand, we've got Lawrence and Thornton, or Thornton and AN other in the second row. Mann, Dan Thomas, and Basham in the back row, and then Bevan, Sheedy, Bowen, Emmanuel, Millard, Adams, and Winnett as a backline. Hughes, Southworth, Azarati, Lawrence slash a another in the 19 jersey with Delarua, Ian Davis, brackets, question mark, close brackets, Johan Lloyd, and Jacob Beetham on the bench. Fraser is, I mean, that's an exciting backline. I'll give us that. If that backline could turn up and score some tries, definitely.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, well, it feels like, when you're picking the team for backs, we've actually got quite a lot of, I mean, the centre's maybe a question mark, 13's a question mark. Apart from that, we've got quite a lot of choice there. And yeah, not just like, oh, I guess we'll put him in and see how it goes. It's like kind of reliable people to come in and come out. It feels quite comfortable in the back line, which is weird to say. Part nine has now become a bit of an issue, but like overall, yeah, that's a pretty exciting back line. And even with the changes, like Stefan Manuel coming at 12, that doesn't that I'm excited to see what he can do if he does start. That'd be really exciting to see what he can do because he's looked great for the under 20s in the Six Nations, and obviously playing for the Rags, it seems like he's on another level to a lot of other people playing. So I'd be really keen to see how he goes out. And even without Ben Thomas, I still have a pretty confident in that team posing a threat to Benetton. Yeah.
They could go really experimental and just pick Alice Bevan and everybody outside him's a winger. Just see what, Well, it worked for Millard. He came in at 13, we weren't sure. So why don't we try, Ewan Stevens at 10?
Is it another Gatland reference of Grady popping back up at 12 and Gatland in the stand just going, I told you so in the back Fordey, Basham at 8. Obviously, Alan Lawrence has been great for us and like proper Mr. Reliable. But is there an argument that, if he has a great game here, that he should be ahead of Lawrence really in the pecking order in terms of like being an international quality player? And if he goes well, that could be his position for the end of the season with Faletau out now?
Yeah, definitely. I think when he came in, you kind of saw him as definitely a starting option. He's kind of been on the bench a lot, barring injuries. So I think he's definitely put his hand up at certain times. I thought he had a very good cameo on the weekend. But yeah, I think, as we touched upon earlier about whether Faletau has played his last game for Cardiff, that is something that definitely needs to be considered with regards to Basham. You'd like to see him have a run of games at 8 because we can't just rely on Alan Lawrence all the time. And as great a player as Alan Lawrence is, we do need that kind of depth there. And yeah, I think, certainly an argument if Basham has a good game, but could see him as the starting 8 going forward.
Good stuff. Right. Any more for any more? Any other business from anyone? All good. Thank you very much, gents. Thank you, Fordey.
Thank you.
Cheers, Fraser.
Cheers, Dan.
And cheers, Simon.
Cheers, mate.
We'll be back next week. We'll look back at that Benetton game, and then, I mean, who knows what the week after holds. We might have a game to look forward to. Otherwise, we shall just do a little preview of the end of the season. Hopefully, look back on a mighty win for the Rags against Newport as well. But until then, thank you very much for listening, and we shall catch you next week. Goodbye.